mid-80s, renowned psychiatrist Dr. Pate Say conducted a secret government experiment. Using an experimental gas-based stimulant, he aimed to keep 5 test subjects awake for what was supposed to be 30 days. Dr. Pate Say kept his subjects in a sealed environment for the duration of his testing to carefully monitor their oxygen intake, heart rates, and brain activity. The containment room was monitored through a large 2-way bulletproof mirror and mic'd with 2 CCTV cameras. The chamber was stocked with books, puzzles, games, running water for a sink and toilet, and enough freeze-dried food and water to last over a month. Dr. Pate Say was adamant that once sealed, the chamber was not to be opened under any circumstance. After the first few days, the subjects were noted to have some slight changes in behavior, but did not complain nor show any signs of unrest. After day 3, it was noted that conversation between the subjects increased, and by day 5, the subjects' discussion took on a darker tone. After day 6, they complained about their situation and developed severe paranoia. They no longer spoke to one another, instead whispering quietly to themselves. A few of the subjects began talking to the cameras, pleading for release. Toward the end of day 9, one subject abruptly began running the length of the chamber, screaming at the top of his lungs. The behavior persisted for 3 hours. Finally, his throat could only produce squeaks in air. His vocal cords were torn to shreds. What researchers found most disturbing about this episode was that it had no observable effects on the other 4 subjects. By day 11, the 4 other subjects had continued sitting still, whispering only to themselves, until one began running and screaming just as the previous subject had done. The 3 non-screamers began calmly tearing the books apart, smearing feces on the pages and placing them over the cameras and 2-way mirror. The screaming stopped. The whispering stopped. It seemed as though all sound was vacuumed out of the room. By day 14, researchers observed skyrocketing heart rates and oxygen levels indicating that the subjects were engaged in heavy exercise, but still no sound. The brain waves were recorded to have almost ceased completely, suggesting severe brain damage had occurred. Amid heated arguments among the researchers, and against stern objections from Dr. Pate Say, it was decided that the chamber would be opened to conduct a conditions check. An announcement was made to the subjects over an intercom. The chamber will be opened. It is day 15. However, payment will be rendered to anyone who is unable to continue the experiment, simply for their willingness to comply. Please lie flat on the floor. Anyone who is unable to continue will be released without liability. To the surprise of researchers, after days of silence and vitals that suggested the subjects were now essentially vegetables, a single phrase rang through the chamber, spoken clearly and calmly from all 4 remaining voices in unison. We no longer wish to leave. As the subject spoke, brain activity spiked, lighting up every cortex. Impossible, scientifically unknown activity in far reaches of the brain thought to be inert matter. Dr. Pate Say demanded the room remain sealed. More debate broke out among the research team. Finally, a senior military officer ordered the chamber to be opened at midnight, flushed of the stimulant gas, and filled with fresh oxygen. Voices pleaded from within the chamber not to turn off the gas, as though their lives depended on it. The chamber was opened regardless, and security forces sent inside. Security officers froze and vomited upon bearing witness to the inside of the chamber. Only 4 of the 5 subjects were still alive, although it was debatable whether or not the state of their existence could be considered life. Food rations sat untouched beyond day 5. The expired test subject appeared to be torn apart. The room splattered in large chunks of flesh. The toilet was clogged with what appeared to be the dead test subject's scalp. All 4 surviving subjects had large portions of flesh torn from their bodies and lacerations covering their chests and legs. Forensics would later confirm that all the injuries had been self-inflicted, and much of the missing flesh was found in their own digestive tracts. The cries for the gas continued, along with violent protests against the removal, screaming and pleading that they not be allowed to fall asleep. The subjects were evacuated to emergency surgery. The surgeons quickly learned that one of the subjects, when placed under the sleep-inducing anesthesia, would scream until his vocal cords ripped. Once the anesthesia took effect, his heart stopped and he died immediately. The 3 remaining test subjects fought the anesthesia so savagely that their bones broke against the restraints. When one surgeon suggested administering a paralytic and conducting surgery without anesthetic, all 3 subjects fell silent, still, and compliant. They endured 6 hours of surgery with no anesthesia and no reaction whatsoever. Continuing their pleas for the stimulant gas, the patients were pressed for an explanation. All three, in one way or another, had the same response: "I must not sleep." Researchers and military officials debated euthanizing the subjects until the quiet, deadpan voice of Dr. Patessé brought the room to a profound silence. "Put them back in." The words were met with silent nods of agreement from the subjects. As they were prepped for re-entry, the subjects noticeably struggled to stay awake, humming, singing, slapping, rocking, head shaking, eye blinking. 20 minutes ahead of re-entry, the eyes of one subject batted uncontrollably as he fell asleep. His heart stopped immediately. The two remaining subjects were rushed to the chamber, the room resealed, and the gas turned back on. On day 20, both subjects were found dead inside the chamber, eyes open, smiling, seating in what appeared to be a calm, almost meditative position. The experiment was shut down, and researchers were ordered to compose a final report. The team discovered that the cameras, thought to have been rendered useless by the subjects' tampering, actually displayed short spats of visible footage here and there, as though a paper was being lifted from the lens for a few seconds at a time. What could be seen was horrific and hellish. The footage was deleted, the hard drives burned, computers confiscated, and the operators sworn to secrecy. Dr. Patessé and two of his students were to be the last personnel to leave the facility, but they never left. Dr. Patessé, under the careful watch of his two most trusted disciples, subjected himself to the chamber. It is unclear to this day what happened, only that the experiment was reported to the military as a success. Dr. Patessé, although malnourished, severely dehydrated, and atrophied, survived the 30 days. The doctor claims he has no recollection at all of his time in the chamber. Scores of data were recorded showing brain activity in regions not medically or physiologically impossible. Heart rates inexplicably high, and oxygen consumption more than triple the normal rate. It has been said that Dr. Patessé continues the experiment to this day, seeking the answer to what actually happens during the 30 days without sleep. He is the only person to have survived the experiment.